Hi friends, welcome to the NPTEL course Leadership for India Inc. Practical Concepts and Constructs. We are in week 4 discussing the subject of competency leadership. In this lecture, we are going to focus on Indian leader competencies. I have 3 Indian leadership models which I will share with you based on my personal experience and detailed understanding of such leadership models. As you know, several of our management thoughts and thoughts on leadership have been shaped by the Western leadership and management models. The leadership models and the leaders that are discussed are by and large the Western leadership models. We have covered several of them through our course materials so far. However, it is important to notice that our own Indian leaders have significant capabilities which are comparable to the best in the world. We need to look at the Indian leadership models and also celebrate Indian leadership. The capabilities of Indian leaders are indeed unique. Most of the literature on leadership focuses on leaders who helmed huge Fortune 100 enterprises in the world. Although only a handful of Indian companies qualify for global ranking, leaders in India are no less capable than their counterparts in developed countries. As India globalizes, as more multinational companies would like to enter India and expand their presence, it is important that there is much greater understanding of Indian leadership potential and performance in the global leadership panels. Indian corporate leaders signify substance more than style. They are focused on growth, overcoming multiple limitations of a historically regulated policy regime. We as a nation are acknowledged to be in the vanguard of global industrialization. And if the world has stood up today to recognize that there exists a uniquely Indian way of management, such acknowledgement and recognition is in no small measure due to the leadership strengths that exist in India. This lecture considers 3 leaders who served Indian companies belonging to 3 different domains and probably 3 different generations as well. This experiential study spans 4 decades, 1975 to 2015, covering the leaders in their respective prime periods and not of their later or current years. The 3 leaders are covered in this lecture based on the close experience with the leaders. They are archetypes of the vast community of Indian leadership that is uniquely Indian yet globally competitive. These leaders figure in my research because they typify uniquely Indian leadership personalities. Interestingly, the 3 Indian leaders I discuss come from public sector ownership perspective as also from the private sector ownership, and they also span different industrial domains through their careers. The 3 leaders who served as apex leaders in different industrial and ownership settings are as below. S. Soundarajan, Chairman and Managing Director of Scooters India Limited, a Government of India owned enterprise in the two-wheeler industry. R.J. Shahani, Chairman and Managing Director of Ashok Leyland Limited, a company owned by British Leyland up to the 1970s and thereafter by Hinduja Group in the commercial vehicle industry. R.S. Prasad, Chief Executive Officer of Orchid Healthcare, a division of Orchid Chemicals and Pharmaceuticals Limited in the pharmaceutical industry. The peak of the 3 leaders' careers corresponded to 1970s and 1980s, 1980s and 1990s, and 1990s and 2000s respectively. Each of these periods provided unique opportunities as well as distinct challenges for the leaders to leave their mark on the respective companies. The Indian leadership ethic is a high performance ethic, thematically around 3 pillars. I have identified these as national rationalism, focused specialization, and technological virtuosity. You can see that these 3 leaders come from different backgrounds. S. Soundarajan, the first leader, comes from a IAS civil services background. Then he moved on to be the managing director of Gordon Reach Shipbuilders and Engineers, one of the most difficult public enterprises to turn around and grow. However, he did that with great aplomb. Then he moved on to two-wheeler industry for launching a company under public ownership, Scooters India Limited. The leader who personifies focus specialization, R.J. Shahani, came from a heavy engineering background. He was the chairman and managing director of Jessup & Co. Then he moved to Ashok Leyland and built the company as one of the most admirable company in the commercial vehicle industry. The third leader, R.S. Prasad, who built the technological infrastructure for making sterile injectable products for Orchid Pharma, came from a pharmaceutical background. He was singularly responsible for driving the generics business of Dr. Reddy's through his technological contributions. He represented the model of technological virtuosity. I would like to emphasize that these definitions are not mutually exclusive. Rather, each represents a dominant theme of the leader's personality. The typical Indian leader is a combination of various apex leadership competencies which we discussed earlier, but these traits and these capabilities are woven around each of the three personality types. Common to all these leaders is the credo of driving growth in a differentiated manner. So, what do these three leaders represent? They represent growth centricity. In fact, the entire Indian leadership approach is competency centric, growth focused, employee friendly, and export oriented. Because Indian leaders recognized early on that we need to look at the global markets to expand the business and also, more importantly, to stay competitive. This ethic emphasizes hard work. The ethic emphasizes high performance, whether belonging to the government owned public sector or family and people owned private sector. This ethic sustains whether the leaders have an entrepreneurial background or professional backgrounds. So, what are the pillars of their approach? One, overriding thrust on growth orientation in spite of resource limitations. India has much more of resource constraints than the Western leaders have. The second approach is goal orientation. The Indian leaders typically promise aggressively and try to deliver authentically. There is also the challenge of navigating through complex regulatory waters. National regulations are tough, international regulations are even more difficult. And they believe in a work ethic which is hard and smart. And typically, most of the leaders I have seen, not merely these three leaders, various other leaders I have come across, are rejuvenated by work and more work. And there is significant amount of contextualization of leadership model. There is osmosis across sectors. There is also adaptation to specific domains. You can see from the previous slide that one leader moved from shipbuilding to two-wheelers. Another leader moved from heavy engineering to truck and bus building. Another pharmaceutical expert leader moved from oral solid dosage forms to sterile injectables. Experiential research supports this lecture. It brings out that Indian leaders never take their journey easy. Successful leaders actively contribute to the Indian leadership canvas and never rest on their laurels. So, what is the common thread across various generations of leaders? As I said, being competency centric, growth focused, employee friendly, export oriented, and work driven is the common thread. And this thread holds good whether leaders come from the public sector or the private sector. If you see the growth of our Indian industry between 1950s and 1960s, there was this first flush of post-independence industrialization. At that point of time, the government policies as also the public imagination favored heavy industry. The policies of the government and the 5-year plans favored commanding heights for public sector in strategic industries. In 1970s and 1980s, there was severe regulation of private and foreign enterprise due to the socialist regime that was existent at that point of time. This has unfortunately constrained private enterprise, enabled public sector to get into areas which probably are not the right areas for the public sector to operate in, and this also calibrated growth of the industry. From the 1990s onwards and through the 2000s, there was economic liberalization. It was like a whiff of fresh breeze for the Indian industry. The opening up of private sector for domestic and foreign investment took place during this period. And in 2010s and 2020s, we have seen globalization. It enabled automatic entry into India in several domains for foreign players, and also much more liberal and open overseas acquisitions by India. Not only the policy framework was liberalized to enable that, but the Indian industrialists themselves became bold and outgoing to execute such overseas acquisitions. As I said, my experiential research covers the leaders who operated in varied industries, heavy engineering, automotive, and pharmaceuticals, and also in different regulatory environments, highly regulated to greatly liberalized. So let's look at each of these models: the national rationalism model, the technological virtuosity model, and the focus specialization model. When in the 1970s the government of India decided to bring into India a two-wheeler scooter for the common man, in competition with the well-entrenched Vespa and Lambretta models of dated designs, and that too through the transplantation of the entire Innocenti production plant from Italy to India, the government turned to S. Soundararajan. He was a leader who is a nationalist and rationalist in one breath. He was ethical to the core. He had a socialist work ethic marked by equality, combined with a capitalistic drive for efficiency and creation of wealth. His egalitarian work culture was characterized by a flat organization, decades ahead of that term becoming popular. Completely down to earth, he rubbed shoulders with the employees across all the hierarchies, and he also rubbed shoulders with the common citizens, whether on official or personal work. He had unflinching faith in the capabilities of Indian engineers to develop and manufacture high technology products. In fact, as you will see from this presentation, the types of initiatives he planned for Indian engineers to excel were unprecedented for the times, that is the 1970s. I don't think even today any company is placing that level of faith in Indian engineers to create ecosystems, not just one or two enterprises, to create ecosystems. Soundararajan had by then, as I said, built a formidable reputation for turning around Garden Reach shipbuilders. And after this track record, he came on to two-wheeler manufacture, which was obviously a great shift in the approach. He had faith in Indian engineers to an enormous degree. He refused to engage any Italian engineer in connection with the transplantation and commissioning of the transplanted plant. He also took no help with reference to the indigenization efforts. Instead, he relied upon the Indian engineers to manage technology transfer, knowledge assimilation, plant commissioning, and commercial launch all by themselves. In fact, if there were gaps, he encouraged the Indian engineers to develop their own designs and come up with blueprints for bridging the gaps. If certain machinery were missing, he worked with the government-owned public sector undertaking Hindustan Machine Tools to develop machine tools to bridge the gaps. In fact, a great machining center was developed by HMT in the 1970s to take care of the machining of cylinder head at that point of time. So he had a strong faith in young graduate engineers of India. He motivated them to set up ancillary component units. In fact, he brought about an entire ancillary campus to support the main plant, and he called upon young graduate engineers to take up units and then grow them along with the main plant. He also had complete reliance on Indian engineers for indigenization. Engineers employed in the main plant as well as the engineers who took upon the ancillary development were asked to come up with their own models of component development. There was no import of components, absolutely. Neither was any dependence on Italian engineers. He also believed in a self-propelling employee base. Young and motivated workforce and ideas of continuous improvement were characteristic of his model. And he also had frugal engineering in mind. The Kickstarter pedal for the two-wheeler was a very complex forging, which was in multi-dimensions as far as the curvature and profile of the Kickstarter pedal went. And that would have been a highly cost-consuming press metal work, the press forging work, to make it happen. He came up with the idea of a three-piece Kickstarter pedal, which not only simplified the capital investment but also brought down the cost of the Kickstarter pedal substantially. And there were several other initiatives that were inspired by his reliance on indigenization efforts. While Make in India, India Advantage, India Can are all in vogue today, it is to Soundararajan's credit that he took revolutionary initiatives back in the 1970s to stimulate Indian industrial thinking for self-reliance and that too against all odds. He emerges in that context as an icon of nationalistic industrial pride in India. He had amazing competencies. I would like to dwell on this particular topic a little more, because competencies are not merely the 30 attributes. Those 30 attributes get expressed as some of the very unique and distinctive capabilities of an individual leader. For example, razor sharp intellect with strong analytical skills. They are present in the performance development attributes which we discussed, but having visibility for the treasure sharp intellectual capability and the strong analytical skills is something which influences followership. That's extremely important. He had an outstanding grasp of engineering. He personally solved many engineering and manufacturing problems on the shop floor and also in the design house. He had an amazing sense of recall. He had a photographic memory at a time when calendarization was not there, when computerization was not there. He just relied on photographic memory to review the entire project plan and the targets through his brain power. He had relentless task focus and also an unforgiving attitude towards slippages. He had a punishing approach towards slipshod work. This ensured that the leadership model was seen as both efficient and effective. He also had a daredevil approach to industrial risk taking, which positioned him as a much respected as well as a much feared leader. The strategy adopted by Soundararajan had many differentiating innovations. Long before competitive strategy came into vogue in the 1980s, he incorporated many strategic innovations. He was a strategic visionary to the core. At that point of time, every state vied with each other to manufacture scooters, and he realized that while the licenses could be easily given to such state governments, multiplication of production would be counterproductive to the industry structure. He conceptualized a model of centralized production of high technology aggregates and components, particularly the power pack and very key crucial components in the main plant at Lucknow, and he promoted decentralized assembly of the finished product in various regional states through independent licensee operations. This reflected his strategic thinking without doubt. He also had differentiated marketing. Direct company outlets of graduate engineers were set up to market those products closer to the customers. Similarly, he had an integrated operation. The value chain integration we talk about, the supply chain collaboration we talk about, was visualized by him, and he had an ancillary industrial estate manned by graduate engineers adjacent to the main plant. He also envisaged high scale of operation, 100,000 scooters per annum, and also he believed in scope. He was always looking for other types of two-wheelers and also ventured into three-wheelers, which was not part of the original drawing board plan. He never believed in having a corporate office. In fact, the office, if at all we may say that way, was in a mezzanine floor of the shop. A sophisticated machining center concept and a paint plant were two of his contributions to the manufacturing infrastructure. They were completely indigenous and had nothing to do with the transfer of machines from Italy. He also led the integration of the company into aluminum die casting. As one may imagine, aluminum is an important aspect of two-wheeler production. So by having aluminum die casting, he promoted integration for better value addition and also better cost capture. Clearly, he was an Indian leader par excellence who inspired others with unparalleled individual competency, irrepressible passion, and unquestionable ethics. He was also a very sensitive coach. I found him to be amazing. I joined from Telco, that is Tata Motors, the systems department, into Soundararajan's office as his special assistant. That was in my formative and foundational years of work experience during the period 1976 to 1978. My 2 years with him gave me a lifetime of valuable experience, I would say, from shop floor studies to strategic licensing affairs and from employee motivation to enterprise management. He developed in me the rare attribute of simultaneously thinking and acting strategically as well as tactically. He also imbibed in me the principle of end-to-end thinking. If you are wanting to control the furnace oil consumption, you need to look at the furnace oil ordering, delivery, consumption, the kind of components we make, the spaces we utilize for making the paint shop activities take place, and various other things. So the principle of end-to-end thinking in the solution of operational and strategic problems, which became my forte in subsequent years, was inspired by his unique approach. He challenged me to continuously raise the bar of performance. I spoke about his personal leadership characteristics: mercurial, volatile, brilliant, and intelligence above par. Intelligence which is exceptional. Obviously, that would challenge me to continuously raise my own bar of performance. He also, therefore, placed me resolutely in the zone of perfection. He taught me the art of standing up to stalwarts. He instilled in me the work ethic of selfless service. That he saw a future leader in me as early as the mid 1970s, despite my soft spoken, self effacing personality, is a great tribute to his ability to identify talent and challenge it as well as shape it to achieve greater heights. Unfortunately, he is no more with us, but his spirit lives on. We come to R.J. Shahani. He represents focus specialization. When British Leyland PLC, which was the controlling parent of Ashok Leyland Limited, decided in the late 1970s to steer the management and operations of its Indian subsidiary into Indian hands, the company focused on R.J. Shahani, the then chairman and managing director of Jessup & Co., which was a state-owned leading engineering firm. His leadership style was characterized by a relentless focus on technological upgradation. He was a strong believer, by far the strongest believer I have seen, in aggressive product development, which is customer-centric. He committed to building high-capacity modern facilities. He believed in multi-location, high-scale strategy. He had a relentless focus on operational efficiency as well. He believed in building strong leadership and management team. It was a decision well validated by the thrust of development and growth that Shahani brought to Ashok Leyland. Popularly known as RJS and Ram Shahani, he had been the long-time chairman and managing director, and in the final phase served as the chairman emeritus of Ashok Leyland Limited. Unfortunately, he also passed away this year, and tributes poured in celebrating his contribution to Ashok Leyland. What were the transformational strategies that Ashok Leyland followed? Under his stewardship, the company grew manifold in scale and scope. When he took over the company, it was having a production level of not more than 10,000 vehicles on an annual basis. And he built scale and scope into product as well as manufacturing strategies. And he took up developments that always looked at the customer's fuel efficiency and load carrying capability. He was also a technology pioneer in that different types of technology streams could be integrated by him in an indigenous vehicle. He was adept at deploying technology as a strategic driver of competitive advantage. He had the uncanny ability of harmonizing the best-in-class technologies of each aggregate of a commercial vehicle. When you look at a typical commercial vehicle, not all of its aggregates, when we say aggregates, we mean engine, gearbox, front axle, rear axle, the propeller shaft, and various other means of propulsion. Not all would be at the same best-in-class capability. The vehicle may be good in the overall, but he had the capability to pick the best of the class aggregates and then build them together into one indigenous vehicle, which then obviously would be much better than the parent technologies. He also had a strategy which was very specific in terms of delivering to the customer through higher levels of technology infusions. He brought in the concept of Hino diesel engine because he realized that we need to have higher specific fuel consumption not only at the laboratory level but at the operational level. The Hino diesel engine had an SFC of, let's say, 160 grams, whereas conventional engines at that point of time were having 175, 180 levels of SFC. He also brought in German ZF synchromesh transmission for better gear changing possibilities, American Rockwell axles capable of bearing higher loads. He also brought in British landing caps. At that point of time, the commercial vehicle was being supplied only as a chassis. He brought in the concept of having a fully built cab or a cowl for the chassis to provide better comfort as well as better safety for the drivers. Product strategy was the core of his competitive strategy. He personally drove the concepts of indigenous vehicle design and manufacturing to execution, redesigned and repositioned heavy duty and defense vehicle lineup, including multi axle commercial vehicles. He was the first to imagine that Indian commercial vehicles needed to be upgraded in terms of the load carrying capability as well as in terms of the loading span. At that point of time, a typical truck was having a gross vehicle weight of 12, that is 12 ton GVW. He came in with the concept of upgrading that to 15 tons and also bringing in intermediate higher range and bringing in the ultimate higher range with multi-axle vehicles. Therefore, he began segmenting the commercial vehicle industry and also leading the trend towards multi-axle vehicles, which are obviously much more fuel efficient on a ton kilometer basis and also capable of carrying much greater payload. He also came up with the innovations like having retractable axles, because multi-axles need not function when the loads are empty. So you should have the ability to run only on two vehicles when the payloads are lower. So whatever engineering excellence he thought about or the engineering innovation he thought about was looking at the customer's benefit. And he believed that these product strategies can only be supported for customer benefit when you have the adequate capacity. He built multiple plants to increase capacity, many capable of accepting multiple technologies. When the capacity level he inherited was 10,000, he immediately envisaged a capacity of 40,000, and he even dreamt of having a 100,000 unit capacity during his tenure. He provided tangible benefits to the users in terms of higher fuel economy, durability, reliability, and load carrying capability of both the trucks and the buses. The singularity of purpose and delivery from a plurality of ownership, regulatory, and environmental conditions is a great feat which has characterized his unique leadership strength. You can see some of the transformational strategies he adopted in 1980s and 1990s, which I discussed. Hino W series engine, which was available in 4 and 6 cylinder, naturally aspirated, turbocharged and turbocharged intercooled versions, gave an unprecedented spread of horsepower from 60 horsepower to 220 horsepower. That was very unique. And Hino represents the best of truck making and diesel engine technology from Japan. I had the proud privilege and opportunity of bringing in that collaboration from Japan to Ashok Leyland, India. Similarly, ZF Synchromesh gearbox that was brought in from Germany, and ZF was a world leader in transmissions. Rockwell axles and the cargo front end structure and the cab system, which came in from Ford. These were all path-breaking initiatives. As I said, he brought in a 16-ton Tusker super vehicle, a Taurus 24-ton multi-axle vehicle, extra long Viking coach, and most importantly, he brought in AL Stallion vehicle for defense services. He offered the benefits of higher fuel economy, higher load carrying capacity, greater long haul capacity, and better lifetime economics. I must also at this point of time say that as I said earlier, he comes from a family heritage of being in defense services with his siblings as well, having responsible positions in armed forces or related fields. It is no wonder that he considered serving with appropriate vehicles the Indian Defence Services as a noble objective. So the connectivity between family background and upbringing to what one could deliver as leadership in certain cases is borne out by the way in which he has opened up Ashok Leyland to manufacturing a wide range of defense vehicles and laying the seeds for becoming a defense mobility institution in recent years. He has exceptional competencies just as Soundararajan had. He had crystal clear thinking. He was never out of focus when he looked at any issue. He had laser sharp focus on what he intended to do, and he was extremely task focused and unpardoning of delays and unjustifiable failures. He excelled in creating seamless operational system which was backed by a high level of conceptual and analytical mastery. He had 360 degrees vision. If you were to make this modification in the machine tool, how it would impact the entire component and vehicle value chain was imagined by him upfront. He, like Mr. Soundararajan, had a photographic memory he managed all scheduling and all follow-up and all project management all by himself through his photographic memory. He had also an extreme finesse in networking. He collaborated with senior leaders of overseas companies effortlessly, and also he stood out as the chairperson of various industry associations. Though he was an engineer by profession, his grasp of and grip over business, financial, and legal matters was simply exceptional. This helped him develop technologically feasible and financially viable corporate strategies. If please look at this, Soundararajan was an expert in finance, but he developed such grasp of engineering matters that he became a designer and manufacturer as if technology was with him through all his educational and experience career. We have in R.J. Shahani an out and out engineer, but he had such financial skills, such legal skills, and such business skills that he was a completely well rounded leader, capable of handling everything from technology to commercialization. The passion for technology and scale of R.J. Shahani was legendary. Technological modernization and infrastructure expansion at Ashok Leyland helped position Ashok Leyland as an undisputed leader of Indian truck and bus industry. Long before Japanese technology began to be appreciated in India, he was the pioneer in absorbing Japanese methodologies and techniques in Ashok Leyland's engine assembly and manufacturing lines. Not only that, he developed such innovation in the manufacturing lines that they could accept not only the Hino engines but also Iveco engines at a later stage. That was the kind of versatility he brought into the manufacturing system, which is a clear reflection of the Japanese thinking mindset he had. Again, from multi-axle vehicles, tractor trailers, and defense vehicles to Hino diesel engines, synchromesh gearboxes, and ergonomic gaps, he was a pioneer of technology modernization. After British Leyland sold its majority stake in Ashok Leyland to a joint venture of Hinduja Group and Iveco, he worked with the Hinduja family to drive the group's diversification moves into several high technology domains as effortlessly as he steered the wheels of Ashok Leyland in the home turf of automobiles. Shahani, in summation, was a person not only of outstanding leadership competencies but certain rare personal characteristics. His penchant for perfection enveloped all matters of his professional and personal approach to life. He was almost like Steve Jobs in selecting the font which is required for a particular presentation. He was also a great artist in seeing how the products can be packaged, how the logos can be designed, and his penchant for perfection was the ultimate. And unlike most leaders, he could use minimal expression for maximal impact. He was a leader's leader too. He was one leader who had several CEOs under him as part of his CXO team, which only demonstrates that he could inspire awe and followership even in leaders who had their own CXO teams and served as CEOs in equally large companies. So his leadership team was really an exceptional leadership team, having several stalwarts of past CEOs with him. He interacted and engaged with professionals across the sites and hierarchy to spot and develop potential leaders. He was also a champion of internal leadership development. He identified R.C. Sai in the 1980s as the future leader of Ashok Leyland and provided the development space for him to move into his shoes. Shahani was a person not only of great technical eminence but also a person of outstanding professional ethics. During his period, the policies were really stringent. Foreign investments were strictly controlled and it was not possible to expand. It required several submissions to enhance capacities, to enhance productions. The markets were in volatile conditions, going up and down based on the economic conditions. And he also had to contend with the ownership changes that Ashok Leyland had to face because the British Leyland moved away and Hinduja Group and Iveco came. Then Iveco moved away and the Hinduja family became the most supportive equity owning group. All through this change path, he held on to his professional beliefs and personal values and saw to it that no genuine technical or business platform was ever mothballed. As a result, many of the platforms he helped bring into Ashok Leyland system are still operational at the company. As far as I am concerned, he was a very sensitive coach despite his being a very tough taskmaster. He looked for perfection and appreciated team members who brought in perfection, and I was probably one of such few people he took personal interest in. Over my long professional career, my association with RJS had been the longest and probably the most profound. My first interaction with him was when I floated a detailed paper in 1982 on what I thought was an adventurous volume and geographic expansion that Ashok Leyland undertook in the 1980s under his stewardship. I was not questioning the direction, but I was questioning the approach of creating several fixed cost structures when it could be done in a leaner fashion. That was the time when Shahani was held in extreme awe by the organization that was very conservatively molded by the previous Indo-British management. However, it was a great tribute to his objectivity and equanimity that he not only took the critically evaluative tone of my note in his stride, but also identified me to his undeclared protege and deputy in several of his strategic business initiatives and technological upgrades that he led at Ashok Leyland. Almost all of these technological upgradations, which I mentioned in the previous slides, were worked through me by him. My relationship with RJS was one of the implicit mentor-mentee trust. He influenced talent development both by precept and practice, and he was a great role model. It was a pleasure and challenge to watch him and also match him as he dissected and analyzed issues in various meetings and also came up with building of numbers for various physical and financial problems which the company has been facing and trying to resolve. At all times, through a combination of qualitative and quantitative measures, he came up with brilliant solutions. Qualitative in the sense that he imagined what the customer and the marketplace would want. Quantitative in the sense that he brought perfection to design, manufacturing, and delivery. Equal opportunity was provided in day-to-day internal corporate management or in external strategic negotiations for me. I was the trusted go-to man to negotiate with any company across the world. Even when the company wanted to do on behalf of Hinduja Group a collaboration arrangement for passenger cars, I was the person who was picked to move into various automobile industries across the regions and negotiate with them. And in that I was greatly supported by Hinduja Group, which also spotted my talent and provided me the full potential for blossoming into a more well-rounded multi-industry strategic executive and strategic leader. It was therefore a privilege for me to be a part of all such developments with him and the Hinduja Group. By making the go-to person for all constructs of strategy, business development, and foreign collaborations, he unlocked the leadership potential and business creativity in me. I could explore myself fully under his watch, and he enabled the Hinduja Group to fully explore my potential in various industries other than the automobile industry. Then let's come to the third leadership model, virtuous technologist. It's virtuosity which reflects in an almost inimitable and perfect skill is what a true expert possesses. It is not everyone's forte, even amongst leaders. Virtuous masters are often seen more as domain specialists rather than as business leaders. R.S. Prasad, RSP, is one leader who believed in technology and quality as drivers of business growth. He helmed the generic formulations businesses of Dr. Reddy's Laboratories and Orchid Pharma of India in the 90s and 2000s respectively. He is certainly a virtuoso of pharmaceutical science and technology who has turned himself also into a passionate business leader without losing the technological edge. He is widely recognized and credited as the creator of some of the finest pharmaceutical research and manufacturing complexes for various corporations in India. He is also considered the pivotal force behind the generic success of select Indian pharmaceutical firms from the mid-1990s to date. If there was one technologist who changed the direction of Indian pharmaceutical industry towards generics and US market, the technological driving force was that of Mr. R.S. Prasad. He represented the best of techno-business leadership. He had an unmatched understanding of the established pharmaceutical science and technology, coupled with a natural ability to develop new science and technology based on his own creative logic. This molded RSP into a very unique techno-business leader. His techno-business leader can be represented as below. First, you develop a complete end-to-end plan when you want to set up a plant or when you want to launch a product. This ensures a clear role definition. Then you impart deep knowledge to each and every member of the team, who are also selected on the basis of an attitude and aptitude to learn and a dedication and commitment to perform. That's the hallmarks for his leaders. And he demands, therefore, accountability for team members. He has not only selected the best team members, he also has provided the best inputs to them. As a result of that, he feels fully justified in demanding accountability from team members. He provides corrective inputs as necessary, and he celebrates team members' wins. So, demanding perfection, developing young talent, providing tough challenges, created a network of former leaders. And therefore, he could change the direction of the Indian pharmaceutical industry towards generics and US market without any doubt. He was also instrumental in developing hundreds of pharmaceutical leaders in India, and several of them are doing great stints in several Indian and overseas pharmaceutical corporations. His model of technological leadership is based on the fact that if you have grassroots technical specialists who can also excel equally as high level strategic thinkers, the companies can indeed prosper. He drove a framework that right minded professionals would work and choose to work again, even if the leader is the most exacting and even if he is seeming to be authoritarian in having work. His leadership style was certainly highly task oriented, but he never lost touch of the relationships. In fact, he always believed that even people who are in the middle range of intellect could be brought up to the higher levels of contribution if only they have the right attitude. He also believed that there is no place in his team, or there should be no place in any organizational team, for those people who rely only on the gift of the gab and really don't contribute to the nuts and bolts of development in the organization. He was a quality evangelist by all definitions. He had an unswerving commitment to quality. He had a deep manufacturing knowledge. Although he was a pharmaceutical research scientist by his early education and early experience, he quickly became an end-to-end design cum manufacturing specialist. He was unique in his contributions to building of facilities which had US FDA approved world-class pharmaceutical capabilities. One of the facilities I have shown in the earlier slide while talking about him is the facility for piperacillin tazobactam lyophilized antibiotics, sterile antibiotic, which is extremely difficult to produce to the required capability, and that he has been able to achieve through his capabilities in both science and technology. He had top class R&D capability. He developed personally and with his teams several products with paragraph 4 first to file status for the US market. He was a person of high integrity and ethics. He was completely goal directed, and he believed in building of teams. He shaped a talent driven, quality oriented organization wherever he was, and all of these were based out of India. He was the technological and scientific power behind the pioneering generics thrust of Dr. Reddy's laboratories, which catapulted the company into the global generics league. He also repeated the same feat at Orchid Pharma in an entirely different product line, that is the sterile injectables. And he was instrumental in developing as many as 18 abbreviated new drug applications in the very first year of operation of that company for US FDA approval. That is a feat I do not think could be emulated by any other company of that scale and size at that point of time. He was an inspirational model because he abhorred mediocrity at the peer and superior levels, but he was inspirational to those people who had the right attitude irrespective of their levels of intellect. So he believed in a three-pronged approach to people development: knowledge transfer, continuous review, and creative solutions. Team members appreciate that his passion to transfer knowledge to them, albeit through diligent working charters, ultimately empowers them. His team members always liked that they were being held accountable to the goals and tasks, and they were reprimanded if they were not able to match up to his expectations, because they all understood that he was doing that to bring out the best in them, and his objective was not criticizing but bringing out the best in them. That was the approach, and he always looked at problem solving rather than just critiquing. And invariably, whenever required, he provided solutions to his teams through working on site and on real-time data. Getting the teams to solve under his guidance was the motto, rather than giving everything fully made just for copying by the team members, or holding only the teams responsible for developing without providing any inputs. He avoided both these extremes. He simply worked with the teams to open up their thinking process and execution capabilities and come up with innovative solutions, and he provided the windows and pathways for those developments to happen. R.S. Prasad goes beneath the veneer to judge the true capabilities and provide challenges accordingly. This results in a people development model as well as organizational model that emphasizes transforming even ordinary individuals rather than ignoring or condemning them. The intellectual model obviously is stemming from the fact that all his facilities were capable of meeting US FDA regulations, and all his products, wherever the opportunity was there, were capable of challenging the patents of the innovators and having a niche exclusive position under the Hatch-Waxman Act in the US markets. He was truly an evangelist of technology and quality, and he believed that doing the right things will get the right results. This is very often quoted dictum that if you do the right things, you will always get the right results. He was a pioneer in developing intellectually independent and secure pharmaceutical formulations that could challenge even the most diligently held patents, because the innovation went beyond what was patented, and he could come up with new ways of doing the same product in a better way. And that provided great commercial success for the organizations with which he was associated with in the global league of top generic markets. In the context of the citations Indian pharmaceutical firms receive from US FDA in recent and current times, the principled model of high integrity and high technological and quality capability that R.S. Prasad personified is the role model that the industry must now look up to. The development planks was that you have to have a holistic end-to-end plan to work on industry leading capability. His 5-point development model for an organization is product development, technology transfer, dossier preparation, regulatory approval, commercial manufacture. That is the entire value chain, which is sequenced, planned with very rigorous activity planning, completely resourced and managed as if it was a tight project to strict delivery timelines. So from R&D facility to manufacturing complex to the supportive infrastructure, he planned, engineered and made everything available. Similarly, from formulation development to the bioequivalence studies and finally to technology transfer, both the plant as well as to the dossiers, he provided a complete interconnected sequencing. So this was a very thorough and detailed techno-economic model of end-to-end development from design to delivery and from API to formulations, covering various infrastructural requirements that medicine has to go through before it becomes something which a patient can be taking. So learning from the pharma guru R.S. Prasad, I have a few takeaways. Although I did not work with him closely as a part of his team members because I was a peer and a colleague at the leadership team level, I have a few things which I learned certainly from him. What did I learn from the pharma guru? He and I shared a belief that my business creativity and his technological virtuosity could create unbeatable value for the corporation. We remained learners from each other. Technologically, he was the master for me, and business-wise, I was the guru for him. As he was quite dogged in his beliefs, and as he was very committed in what was his belief as the credo, and because he was so immersed in his lines of thought and pursuits of excellence, people considered it a challenge to prompt him to look at a different point of view. In my long conversations with him, I could challenge him and also could get challenged, expanding our horizons of knowledge in the process. This process gave me a unique opportunity to understand his capabilities, conceptualize his leadership model, and make suggestions for his becoming an even more effective leader, combining the best of his technology and the best of business he must have. On the other hand, it was to his credit that he accepted some of the most strident feedback from me as long as it was logical. I had the opportunity of working closely as a colleague, as a senior leadership team member, and I have 3 critical learnings from RSP. 1, end-to-end planning and execution. 2, simultaneous and sequential activity planning and scheduling. Third, process and people management of the highest order. If a leadership model of perfect planning and execution, marked by the highest standards of quality and self-reliance, are ever needed to be defined in one model, R.S. Prasad exemplified it. If I look at the common characteristics and attributes of Indian leaders, the intellect comes on the top. The account of the three leaders in this lecture and several other leaders not covered in this lecture but observed by me as part of my work relations as well as part of my leadership responsibilities points out certain attributes that are common amongst the great leaders of India. One, it is the intellectual edge that calibrates the leader's stature in India. Indians, by and large, are intelligent and growth focused. They would not accept a subpar intellect in leadership. So, it is the intellectual edge that calibrates a leader's stature in India. The leader will certainly be respected for his or her intellect beyond formal authority. And typically, Indian leaders who have reached the top and who have become role models in their own use more of their intellect to lead their teams. Interestingly, they also rely on instinct and intuition to make their decisions. When you look at the decisions, particularly the strategic decisions taken by Soundararajan, R.J. Shahani and R.S. Prasad, you will find that they were prompted by their instinct and intuition to make certain decisions which are of long-term import and which entail certain risks, including placing faith on Indian team membership. So, intellectual abilities which comprise the depth and breadth of knowledge, impeccable memory and sharp thinking, these are essential for leadership in India. Similarly, certain unique leadership factors, that is visualization beyond the obvious, conceptualization of complex issues and incisive analysis of data and information, these are also extremely important. The intellectual component of the common Indian leadership model is the one that is the most visible component of the Indian leadership model, and it is appreciated and followed by all the team members in Indian's context. The other common attribute is the theme. Every leader comes up with a theme that is very unique to the organization. However, there is a common underlining signature theme which every leader brings to the table. Each leader tends to get known by one or two signature themes unique to him or her. That signature theme is what defines the greater purpose of the leader. These are not dogmas. These are pragmatic but very core purposes of the leaders. They may modify the themes based on the context, but is not a common occurrence. These unique themes embellish the commonly shared competency basket in a manner unique to each leader. So, the themes we looked at, for example, nationalistic fervor, networking finesse, global propensity, perfectionist quest, technological excellence, entrepreneurial spirit, influential communication, collaborative mindset. These are the expressions of the development, performance, and apex leadership qualities we considered. As I said in the beginning, these three pillars of Indian leadership drive, that is the nationalistic fervor, technological virtuosity, focus specialization, are not mutually exclusive. Even though R.J. Shahani was fully believing in focus specialization, there was great nationalistic fervor in him because he wanted to contribute to the road transport industry and making truck operators as economically running as possible in their service. He also was highly nationalistic in that he started the development of very high performance trucks and mobility vehicles for Indian defense services. There was a national fervor. Similarly, when Soundararajan started relying on Indian engineers for indigenization efforts, and when he relied on graduate engineers to set up ancillary units and dealer networks, he had the great fervor, which is again people development fervor, to develop indigenous talent, Indian talent to great levels. Similarly, when R.S. Prasad talked about entering the US market through complex and challenging innovative pharmaceutical products, he brought in a rare technological excellence to challenge the biggest of big pharma and occupy a space in the US generics markets as per the legal framework that was available for Indian pharmaceutical companies. The thematic component, that is the signature theme of each Indian leader, is unique, and that makes the leader unique to the context as well as to his or her own leadership personality. Another common attribute of the Indian leaders is the stretch factor. Every Indian leader of high ranking capability believed in stretching himself or herself and the team members for aspirational goals. They believed in imparting industry leading capability to their firms and to their team members. Leaders who inspire others tend to demonstrate certain common stretch factors. These stretch factors bring out the best in the team members in terms of aspirations and goals. All the three leaders whom I have considered in my presentation have this theme of stretching themselves and the team members to accomplish something extraordinary. The leaders have the perceptive ability to recognize the talent capability in individuals, and they role model themselves and also inspire the team members to undertake highly stretched goals. So the characteristics of this stretch thematism is grasping the unrelated, practicing more than just educating people on the precept, aggressive task orientation, demonstrated ownership and accountability. These are the ones which are extremely important at one level. At the other level, faith in Indian technology, reliance on the youth, leading people with an emotional touch, aiming for fast track. Those are the other aspects of stretch thematism. Most importantly, great leaders also happen to be leaders as well as people's leaders who succeed in building great relationships with the team members and become a holistic leadership team that would deliver great things for the organizations. And sustainable performance, growth performance is signed into their leadership models because of these three common attributes and the thematic campaigns they run in their organizations. We can also question ourselves, if all the leaders had such sterling leadership attributes, why didn't the companies become what they could have become faster and in a more impactful manner? The answer to that lies in the external environment, which didn't easily permit a high level of growth given the policies existing in those points of time. That said, there are also certain weaknesses which we can flag, and we can use those understandings of the weaknesses to make these leadership models that I have articulated even more perfect and even more sharp. One, the extremely high dependence on instinct, at times leading to adventurous resort to improvisation and jugaad. It happened to an extent in the case of Mr. Soundararajan when he decided instinctively that graduate engineers could be relied upon to develop new components as well as new dealerships. Secondly, the belief in the path chosen is so high that there is a dogmatic diffidence to course correct in time. So preferring inexperience over experience is probably a dogma which a leader could have, and that dogma could make all the difference to sharp execution versus a kind of checkered execution. The third one is specialization leading to zones of comfort. The drive for perfection in a chosen product group could make a leader confine himself or herself to the chosen product group and ignore the opportunities that arise in the external environment. That could be one weakness. Very strong leadership also believes in top-down push in planning and execution to an extent. Given also the fact that such leaders are intellectual stalwarts, have demonstrated impeccable and perfect performance, team members are also loath to confront them with their own plans and execution, or even discuss with them their own plans and execution. This leads to high regulation and low empowerment of teams. Lack of self-sufficient leadership, that is inability to look around, benchmark team members, that could be one of the weaknesses, because whenever the individual team members falter, the leader is available at hand to provide the inputs and make the team leaders perform. At times, dependence on ownership interests, whether it is the governmental ownership or the family ownership, promoter ownership, or catering to the market requirements in terms of market capitalization, could also limit the way Proper specialization and proper diversification strategies could be adopted by companies. There could be an excessive reliance on core competence. Many people, particularly in high leadership positions who have tasted great success, could take the theory of core competence far too deep into the mindset of the organization and fail to absorb the opportunities that exist for meaningful diversification, creating more core competencies of the nature they already have. As can be seen, in each case, an excess of the dominant streak of leadership served to erode the potential full impact of the respective leadership models. In the leaders we have considered, and also in several leaders I come across, their strengths also act as their weaknesses too. That's because the strengths are so immense that it is very easy for the followers to get overawed at the enormous capabilities they possess. We should not extend those leadership capabilities beyond a point. Instead, provide the free play for independent development of thought process and execution paradigms with others as well. There could always be an alternative methodology of functioning which could either strengthen the leader's position or provide a more impactful alternative position. If Indian leadership works on its strengths even further by minimizing these weaknesses arising out ironically from the strengths, then Indian leadership can make an even more powerful impact on India's industrial development, business development, and global competitiveness. So, when Indian leaders have plurality of issues and models, what should we do? We should first of all recognize that these weaknesses are not insurmountable handicaps. A little moderation or aggression on some of the components would unleash the full potential of the leadership models that we have studied. India has had and continues to have deep leadership talent, of which the few models discussed here are some of the finest examples. And there are several other accomplished leaders in India, and they have their own variants of these models. Indian leaders face many handicaps compared to the overseas counterparts. Dated technology and scarcity of resources is just one. We also have the paucity of trained and customized talent. There is an excessive, at times unintentional regulation. Lack of financial resilience. We cannot create resources on the fly because we are subject to various restrictions when the companies are promoter or family owned. There are other types of restrictions in terms of getting the debt, and there are climates which are very sensitive to the overall economic growth, and the availability of credit could be kind of restrained in certain adverse situations. All this can be defined in terms of a risk-averse banking system. But Indian leadership models have many goals, out of which self-reliance and global competitiveness are two of the most important goals that Indian leadership has today. The plurality of issues needs plurality of models. We need to build on intellect-driven work ethic. We need to integrate more innovation in the leadership models that we have. As I said earlier, leaders need not be technologists per se, but they must have the ability to understand where good science and technology could be deployed for the growth of the firms as well as the economy and the society. And for that to happen, successful leaders need to role model their leadership model, both in planning and also in execution and expression. Indian leadership has continuously reinvented and reinforced itself, and where necessary also mellowed over the years. As India embarks on a new phase of Make in India stride across the globe, as India is inspired by the Atmanirbhar slogan of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi to become a global economic power by 2030, these and such other Indian leadership stalwarts would continue to shine light on and lead the path of such progress for the Indian industry and the Indian economy. Thank you.